everyone. Barbara from AllBrands.com, and thank you so much for joining us today. I have a very special guest. Her name is Tanya Giroir, and she is an instructor for the LSU Ag program in 4-H for life skills for young men and women. And she is in charge of showing them how to sew. And I feel like this is such an important calling, and she's going to be sharing with us some different sewing stitches, and I'd love for you to meet her because she's a wonderful woman. And AllBrands has for many years contributed to the Louisiana State University Ag's fashion review every year, and we've donated a sewing machine to the young winner of the fashion design contest. So we love her very much and her cause. And we love 4-H very much and its cause. And we know that you'll love her too. So I'm going to bring in Tanya Giroir from the Louisiana State University 4-H fashion review.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Barbara, for that fine introduction. And I want to thank you and AllBrands for all that you do for our 4-H fashion review program. You know, my mom taught me to sew a long time ago, and my first project was a total disaster. But it wasn't until my first high school home economics class, and it still breaks my heart that, you know, the powers that be decided home economics was, you know, not going to be offered in a lot of places, and so it still breaks my heart. But so more in my home economics class, and I made this pink dress and loved it. It had a zipper. It was just the cutest thing. I was very proud of it, but I made the biggest mistake is I didn't pre-wash my fabric before I cut it. So I wore it one time and then it shrunk after I washed it. And so, you know, a lot of the lessons that I've learned over all these years in the hard way, but makes perfect, and I've learned so much from my own mistakes and from the mistakes of others. But today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to let you know that after I taught home economics and for a long time, I ended up teaching at LSU, again, basic sewing fundamentals to our students, and then love what I'm doing today, because while home economics taught us a bunch of life skills, that's what 4-H does, and that's what I'm still doing today. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share what I know. And so I will tell you, though, my favorite way to sew is with my two granddaughters, Audrey and Margot, sitting on my lap. So I'm all for teaching the next generation how to sew. It's an important skill. It's one that we can use for the rest of our life. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how to use basic things on how to use a sewing machine, some basic stitching seams, how to press them open, because there are, if you can sew all you want, you're not going to press your seams. They're going to not look all that good. I'm going to show you how to do that correctly, give you plenty of tips along the way. So hang on, we're going to do sewing tools and equipment first. Okay, so
excited. Okay, so everybody who's watching, I will be monitoring all the comments that you make. So if you have questions, be sure to let us know. Let us know where you're watching from. Give us a shout out. Give Tanya some love because she deserves it for everything that she does and all of the young lives that she influences along the way. So I'll go backstage, and Tanya, you can take it away.
All right, thank you. All right. I have a ton of equipment, and I've got a whole lot more than this stashed away. But this is the things that I feel that you need when you're beginning to sew. You need a good pair of shears and scissors, okay? And these are shears. You see that these are long, and they have, you know, a bent edge on it. The reason we have these is you want to cut your fabric, and I'm going to lower my camera so you can see when you're using your shears, you want to cut. You want to leave the scissors down on the table and close against the table. I've been having these these scissors right here for about 40 years. You see this little piece of ribbon on the end? Everybody in my life knows that they are not to cut anything but fabric with these scissors. And if I do, I'm going to cut their neck off with it. No, I'm just teasing, but they know Now, you also need paper.
Oh my gosh, I'm cracking up over here. I love that.
They all know, everyone in my office, every one of my students, every one of my children, my husband, they all know, and they teach it well. But these are old paper scissors, so you need a pair of paper scissors as well, because you will be cutting paper patterns and stuff. All right, these are scissors, okay? Excuse me, these are shears. These are scissors, and these I love because they're smaller. They fit in my little hand, and this is what I put next to my sewing machine when I'm sewing to snip, to clip, and they're very sharp. I have cut myself a few times before, and you'll notice I have ribbon on these as well. While we're talking about shears, here's another pair, and I want you to look at the teeth on this. They're pinking shears, and when you cut fabric with pinking shears, again, you want to press down as you're cutting them, and you'll notice they have little teeth, and that's what it does, and that helps to clean finish so that the fabric doesn't ravel. But I'm going to show you a ton of different ways so that even this won't ravel. All right, okay, let me come back up just a tad. All right, so these are shears. These are scissors. This is what I'm going to use today as I'm sewing. All righty. Now, this is my very best friend in the whole wide world. This is a seam ripper. And yes, I've sewn a lot, but I've ripped a lot. And if you're going to sew, you are going to need one of these. In fact, I have several of these. So seam ripper is your friend, and that's what you want to say. Seam ripper is my friend. I also keep this by my machine as well. Okay, your machine uses needles, okay, and there are all kinds of needles. I'm using universal. They're pretty, well, universal. You can sew a lot of different things with it, but if you have different kinds of fabric, you will need different kinds of needles. These are stretch needles. We use that for knits. These are jersey ballpoint needles, also for knits. Kind of helps the needle go through the fabric and not cut the yarns or threads. Denim. Denim is thick. These are strong, and they have a bigger diameter than some of your finer needles. Also, what?
I'm sorry. I love that you're showing those needles because yesterday we actually had a Facebook Live with Schmetz needles. So if you haven't watched that live, definitely check that out. We were talking about those chrome needles that they make.
Sweet.
And do you want to know a fun fact?
What?
It takes 12 weeks to make one needle.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. My favorite thing about these needles, or for sewing machine needles, is there's right down, and you can't see that, but right down the center, once you put it up in your machine, there's a little slit or a little slot. And what it does is it helps to guide the sewing thread through the eye of the needle, and it just does a wonderful job. So I also have top stitching embroidery needles. I've got more needles than that, but that's enough for today. All right, so that's for your sewing machine. Your sewing machine needs thread. I have some samples of threads here. You have a top thread, and then you have a bottom thread. This bottom thread is called a bobbin, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit when we talk about the machine. Now, the biggest tip I can give you for a spool of thread is when you purchase a spool of thread like this, the thread comes attached or hooked somewhere along the edge, and then it's tucked up under the label. You're going to have to peel the label back to get it out. But what happens is when you get ready to put this on your machine, you want to run your finger around the edge and find that slit where they put it. And I found it. And there's that slit. I know you can't see it, but whoops, watch. Here it is. The slit is to put your thread through, and it just doesn't go all over the place. It anchors your thread. So when you put this spool of thread, you want to make sure it goes down so that it pulls your sewing machine pulls it from this way so that it doesn't get caught up, because it'll get caught up, I promise you. Barbara, you want to say a little bit more about threads in general?
Yes, there's so many different kinds of thread, Tanya. Oh my gosh, we could talk all day about thread, but there's different materials of thread that you can purchase. So you can purchase a polyester or a rayon or a cotton thread for sewing. And then there's embroidery thread, and there's different, the different ways that they're wound. But I'll tell you one of my favorite threads that I use when I sew, that I can endorse, just because I love it so much. This is an Egyptian cotton thread. It's sold at AllBrands, and it's made by a company named Arafil. And I use this for sewing and quilting. And you can also use it for embroidery. Now, cotton is a natural fiber. So if you want something that's going to stand up to like a washing, high washing, I would maybe choose a polyester thread. But this one also has a different way that it comes off the spool. So like, just like your Coats and Clark that you had, it was wound all the way around like that. There, you would put that on a vertical spool so that it winds off like this. But then there's other types of spools where it winds off like this. So just pay attention to what different kinds of spools you have, because sometimes you'll have to put it in a vertical or horizontal spool. But this one has a detachable bottom on it, so you can use it either way. You can feed it from the top or the side, but it can hold the thread for you. And then that one that you have there that's still wrapped in plastic, that one has a really unique thread holding system too. So yeah, I definitely recommend, if you want to have success in sewing, definitely do your research about good quality threads, because I think that that's really important. So.
Thank you, Barbara. And a couple more things. Never buy the cheap thread. Don't buy it, because you're going to spend a lot of time and effort, and you've spent money on all of your fabrics and notions and equipment. And if you use cheap thread, you're only going to get frustrated, I promise. All right. Sometimes, though, here it is. I use dental floss as my thread. If I'm sewing on a button back on jeans or a winter coat, now you can get buttonhole twists, and you can get some thicker threads other than the ones that we showed you today. But I've even used dental floss. So that's my confession today. All right.
That is a new one for me, Tanya. I've never heard that before.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I do that often. I do. I really do.
I'm going to try that. I'm going to have to go in my bathroom and take that and try it in my sewing room.
There you go. No, this one stays in my sewing kit. I don't use it in the bathroom. It stays in my sewing kit. Okay.
And I just want to say, we have a longtime watcher, Fred Connie Beeler, and she loves 4-H. She said that, and she's mentioned this a few times on our videos, that she has grandkids that have been in it for several years, and it's very involved in doing the contests. So,
well,
yeah.
Thank you. We have our big contest going on next week. In fact, all of are uploading. We're doing it virtually this year for the first time. Now, that's been an interesting learning curve for me. But I have 3 sewing contests that my 4-Hers are uploading all their information and pictures of their projects. I have judges like you, Miss Barbara. Thank you for judging the sewing contest. And they'll be judging the information and the photos that are being uploaded next week. And then on Thursday, the following week, we're going to have a fashion. We're putting all together those photos of all the garments that the students have put together. And guess what? It's fabulous. And y'all are all welcome to watch that. That's the Thursday, the 23rd, 2nd, 3rd, somewhere in there. I don't have my information in front of me. I'm sorry. I'm on that part. But anyway, it's fabulous, and you can watch it. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. Watch it online, because it's going to be online. So it'll be fun.
Wonderful. Well, we'll share it with everyone then.
All
Thank
right. I'll send it to you.
Thank
All right.
you.
Let's move on. We just talked about thread. Well, if you're going to be hand sewing, then you're going to need some hand needles. Now, these are just a variety of sewing, hand sewing needles, sharps between darners, embroidery. That's what's in this packet. And if I were going to purchase something in particular, I would buy a variety because you don't know what you're going to need. And here's a tip. Of course, you're going to need a pin cushion. We made this at Fashion Camp one year. For your needles, I'm going to come in close. For your pins, you just stick them right in. But for your needles, you don't want to do that. You want to kind of poke them in on the side so that it doesn't show up very well. But there it is. You don't want to stick it in because they get lost. And when you pick up your pin cushion, it pokes you. So be careful with that. All right, we were talking about hand sewing needles. So you need some of those. You also need some straight pins. I like the ones with the big head on it because they're easy to grab, easy to find when you drop them all over the floor. All right, and they come in different kinds as well. They have long, silky ones that are very fine fabrics. They have little short quilting ones. Again, what you're choosing to use depends on the fabric and the project that you're doing. So do your research. Okay, I like a leather thimble, and you can wear it on whatever finger you want, but this is a thimble, and I love it, and you can tell it's kind of old. I've used it over and over again. I don't know how old this is, but I've been having it, I know, for 20 years. Still love it. Of course, you can also get the metal thimbles. This was my grandmother's thimble, and it is the best thimble. They don't make them like that anymore. They do make metal ones, but they're real thin. This is a real thick, and the little grooves are real deep, which help. Also, which I like, is beeswax. If you're going to do some hand sewing, and that's exactly what it is. What you're going to do is, if you're hand sewing, you're going to cut your thread, and you're going to take it, and you are going to put it through the groove of it. And what it does is it coats the thread with a little bit of beeswax. And then as you're sewing, it doesn't get all knotted up like a bird's nest. All right. Well, as I'm getting older, I don't know if you can really see this, but this is a needle threader. It has a place for you to hold, and then it has this little metal piece. And that little metal piece helps to me to go into, if I can see, okay, you put it through the eye of the needle, and then you put your thread through the hole right here, and then it threads your needle. And I can do that for you. So let me show you. All right, so I have the needle threader through the eye of the needle. I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to put it, I'm trying to get it so you can see what I'm doing, is put it through that and then pull it on through. Then you just pull this thing through, and there it is. It certainly helps. And there I have threaded my needle with my needle threader. And I love it. And I use it from time to time, not only on hand sewing needles, but also on my machine. All right. You also need some safety pins. Safety pins, we use those. I use them all the time, not only to do some repairs, but also until I can get to the sewing machine. But I use them to put in ribbons and through a casing, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. Here's one more needle I want to show you. It's a yarn needle. It's big eye, and it has a smooth surface. I use that sometimes to do thread ribbon or elastic. You can use it as a bodkin to go through your casings, which I'm going to show you how to do today. But I have a bodkin, and it seems to escape me. I must have it with my casing. I also like these. This is a pair of tweezers. Well, came with my serger, and they help me when I'm trying to pick up thread. It's wonderful. Okay, so these are all pieces of to sew with, but you also need to have some measuring tools. I have a seam gauge. This helps us when I'm making a hem, and it has inches and it has centimeters on it. But if I'm going to make an 1.5 inch hem, this little metal piece right here, can you see that? Slides back and forth. You can go to 2.5 inches and go down to 1 inch or 1/4 inch. And it helps to measure when you want to turn up something. So let's say I'm going to make an 1.5 inch hem. I'm going to measure 1.5 inches. I'm going to turn it up until it meets that 1.5 inches right here. And so what it does is you move it along, and you can be assured that your hem will be the same width. The hem width will be the same or accurate all the way around. Now, this is one of my favorite rulers. It's a clear ruler. It helps me when I'm cutting out. It helps me when I am stitching and sewing. And I do that very same thing with this as I do with the seam gauge. Okay. I can measure, put it under my hem, put it in my fabric, turn my fabric over, and measure all along the way. So I like it as well. And of course, you can't sew without a measuring tape. You want a measuring tape that's flexible, but you want one that's sturdy. And I wear mine around my neck because I'm always looking for it. That and my scissors. All right, so when you are getting a pattern, whether you are sewing online or not, you need something to mark with. You can use what they call a tracing wheel and tracing paper. I've used that for years. I started using little pencils, and they have washable pens. I will tell you though, one of my favorite things is just a piece of Taylor's chalk. I love this. And I'll confess, I've even used a piece of sidewalk chalk or a child's chalk when I, was elsewhere and didn't have my sewing kit with me. So, you can improvise with a lot of different things. And there are a ton more little things that you can use to sew with. You just go down the aisle in the sewing section and you'll see there's so much.
I am loving this, Tanya. Thank you so much.
Oh
my goodness. I'm so inspired. Can I just say one marking pen that I love?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if anybody's used this. This is called the Pilot Friction Ball. So this is like, it has a little eraser on it. So it's for marking fabric. And you can erase it with the little eraser on the tip, or it goes away when you put heat on it. So when you iron, it'll automatically disappear, which can be a bad thing sometimes if you don't remember that it's heat away. But I really do like this one for marking.
Awesome. I didn't know about that one. Thank you for sharing.
Oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. Thank you, Tanya.
Well, they also have some that are washable, come out in the wash. But you do want to be careful. If at all possible, you want to make sure all your markings are within the seam allowance. But when you're making a dart or something that's going to show, you want to test it out on the fabric. So if it comes off in heat, take a piece of scrap fabric, try it off, press it with your iron. If it comes off with washing, see if it comes off. You want to test it because you don't do all that work and then your marking is showing. I made that mistake as well. I love this tool. This is for corners when you are going to make like a pillow or turn a collar, or anytime you're going to go into a small space. This is, I call it a poker. That's not really what it's called, but it pokes the edge of your fabric. And I'm going to use it later on because we're going to make a pillow. You're going to know how to make some different kinds of corners to make your pillow look great. All right, so those are all of my pieces of sewing equipment that I have, small. I have some others. And Barbara, if you would go over to the iron, to the other screen, I'll show.
Yeah. And while we're doing that, Frank Connie Beeler says that she also likes, and I think that you're referring to the alligator clamps, and yeah, those are really great too. So good suggestion. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so here we go. If you don't have a sewing machine, excuse me, I'm going to tell you, you have a sewing machine, you have your ripper, you have your good shears, you have all that wonderful equipment, you must have an iron. I don't have an ironing board. I just have this little Teflon coated sticky pad on here, which protects my tabletop. I do have an ironing board, but right now I don't have access to it. So I just moved into a renovated home, and half of my stuff is packed. So anyway, even this sleeve roll and this tailor's hem I use when I'm pressing a curved seam, and you need these. Now I've used rolled up towels when I didn't have this, but these are my sister's because mine are packed up. So anyway, we've had a great time sewing, and she's a new sewer. Sewed in high school home economics, but didn't sew since. So your iron, there's heat, and that can burn your hands. But I will tell you, if you put water in here and you are pressing, and there is steam, you will burn your finger just as badly. So you be careful with the steam of your iron. Your iron has temperatures on it. Cotton, if you're doing cotton, a cotton fabric like we're using today, you can go hot. It says cotton. But if you're doing a silk or a rayon or a delicate fabric, you want to lower it, because I promise you, it will melt your fabric and then ruin it. Always test. Always have a little piece of scrap fabric, not only for your sewing machine and for your marking, but also for your iron. And I will tell you, when I cut out my fabric to make a garment, I always cut out a scrap of fabric, and I use it as a pressing cloth. So I will take whatever it is that I'm sewing, and I will put it down. Then I put my pressing cloth on top as I press. What does that do? It protects your garment from scorching, just in case you have it too hot. Or if you have something on your iron, you should make sure you clean your iron. They make special cleaners for that. But you want to make sure that you are taking care. I need to make sure my iron is not on. I got to put it on. Okay. All right.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I'm going to explain one thing that I love, and that it's available for a lot of irons, but I really love the Laura Star irons. And the reason why I love them is that it's not a really, really high temperature sole plate, but it has a lot of steam, and it's a vacuum board that we did a video on that with the Iron Man. So definitely check that out. But there's iron shoes available for when you are getting like silks and things that you don't want to burn with the high heat of an iron. There's so many different synthetic and even like silk materials, natural fibers that are very delicate, and you don't want to melt them. So.
I don't have a shoe. I'm going to buy me a set of shoes.
I have so many shoes, but only have one of these.
Oh, you never have too many pairs of shoes.
Christy,
oh, wow.
Or Crystal says, I love to sew. And yes, I agree. So.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to look at our sewing machine. I want to say one of the most important things about your sewing machine is your sewing manual. When I purchased this sewing machine, I went home very excited. I opened up the box, took the manual out, took my machine out, and looked at every page. I made every stitch, and all machines are different. No, you know, they're not created equal. I have one that's over 100 years old and it still works, and I love it. It was my grandmother's machine. And it's one of those old converted ones. Still use it. It sews really well. It purrs like a kitten, but so does this one. This one's computerized. It has lots of different kinds of stitches available in it. And so as you go through your manual, do everything so you know what your machine can do for you. And you want to take care of it, because if you don't take care of your machine, you're going to get frustrated. So you definitely want to look at the maintenance of it, how to do that, what they recommend, and do it. All right. So your owner's manual is important. We talked about machine needles. Your machine usually comes with a little kit that has screwdrivers. Here is your screw that holds your machine, your machine needle in there. A lot of times when I'm working, I will lower this part right here. Looks like a set of skis, and it has a lifter. It's called a pressure foot lifter. And you don't want to drop it. Oh, no. You want to lift it and you want to lower it. Lift it and then lower it. So that's very important to take care of your machine. All right. Also down in
Tanya, can I add, because you're just bringing up so many great points. Some machines also have knee lifters, which I love, and that will automatically raise and lower the foot with your knee so that you can maintain your hands on the fabric. And I love the machine that you have. I wish that we still sold that. That is actually the Anthony Ryan special edition machine, and we were so excited when he won the season of Project Runway and the All-Stars. So we came out with a special edition machine with his face on it. So I love that you have that machine.
I love that I have it too. In fact, I was there at your store when he came as a guest, and he talked and visited, and so it was fun. And he's in San Antonio these days.
I know.
I know. That's exciting. All right. So let's see. Where was I? Oh yeah, we were talking about the needle. This is the presser foot lifter. Of course, this is your presser foot. And underneath your presser foot, if you put your finger under there, you'll notice it has teeth. And that's called a feed. And what it does is it actually, here's your fabric. It feeds your fabric through. You don't push, you don't pull your fabric. Your machine pulls it through with that feed down there. And your manual will show you how to lower it if you don't want to use it, if you want to do some freehand stuff, which is awesome fun. But anyway, that is when you lower your presser foot on your fabric, it activates that feed and it pulls it through, which is awesome. So remember, don't pull, don't push, let the machine do its job. Sometimes though, if you don't put your fabric under enough where the feed can catch it, it won't go anywhere and it'll ball up. So you just want to make sure you put your fabric far enough under the machine so that it presses and so the feed can pull it through. Remember that. All right, let's see. Also down up in here is a feed guide, a thread guide, they call it a sewing guide. It's a sewing guide, and it has measures on it in centimeters and also in inches. Most of the commercial patterns use a 5/8 inch, and they'll use a 1/4 inch, a 3/8 inch. So they'll tell you in the directions of the pattern exactly what type of seam allowance, how wide you want the edge of your fabric, and then where you're going to actually stitch it. And that's called your seam allowance. And that is what that does. And when you're sewing, you don't want to look at your needle. You want to look at the edge of your fabric going along that 5/8 inch mark or that inch or whatever it is that you're sewing. So watch your fabric against that thread guide as opposed to watching your needle. Your needle's going to go up and down all by itself. You don't need to watch it. When you set up your machine, I can't tell you how many, we'll have like 30, we've had as many as 50 campers at our sewing camps at 4-H, at our 4-H Educational Center in Central Louisiana, and they get their sewing machines out of their box, and I'm so proud of them. And they've never used it before, so they don't even know how to set it up. So we go through all of that. And the biggest mistake, I believe, it was not a mistake because they don't know, is that when you set your machine up, your machine should be your needle and your throat plate and all should be in the center of you. You want it right here. A lot of them will put it way over on the side because they're centering the machine. Well, you don't center the machine. You're going to have a whole lot machine over on your right-hand side. So be sure when you set up your machine that you're in the center of the needle. That's where you need to be sitting. And because that'll give you the best place, and your hands are going to be in the right place to hold and to guide your fabric through. All righty. Another important part, I'm going to turn my machine a little bit so you can see right here is your hand wheel. Oh, no, you can't see it. All right, let's do this. The hand wheel. The hand wheel goes around automatically, but you can turn it. On some machines, you can actually see the what's called a take-up lever. Your thread goes from your, I'm going to open this up. Here's my thread. My thread goes here, it goes up, it goes down, it goes around, it comes back through. Well, there's a little piece right in here, and you can't see it on mine because they covered it up. But on a lot of machines, it's still visible. And your needle goes through that take-up lever. And that little take-up lever does just that. It goes down, and it takes up the thread. It goes down and it takes up the thread, and it does that however fast you're going to sew. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. You always want to make sure that your take-up lever is in the up position. And if you are sewing in, on this machine, it does it automatically for us. So I don't have to worry about it anymore. But on those machines, you need to make sure that your take-up lever, that little piece that has thread in it that takes up the thread, you're going to turn this always toward you, always toward you. If you turn it the other way, you knot up the thread in the shuttle box, where the bobbin, the lower thread is, where that needle goes down to catch it, which leads us to our next point. So you want to make sure that take-up lever is up. If your machine doesn't do it automatically for you, then you turn your hand wheel all the way around until the take-up lever's up and the needle is in the upper position. If you don't do that, you're going to get frustrated with using your machine. All right, where was I? Always make that a habit to check it if you see it. Okay, make it a habit. Make it a habit to turn your hand wheel toward this, whether it automatically takes it up for you or not. Always, always, always turn your hand wheel toward you, always toward you. And it is in a counterclockwise if you're looking at it, but it's towards you. I think that's the easiest way to remember. All right, you want to always, okay, let's continue talking down here. A lot of different machines have a lot of different bobbins. My bobbin case is a drop-in one, and I have, here's my bobbin, and I pre-threaded it. And if you're going to wind your bobbin, you want to follow the directions in your manual, but mine's right up here. And so if I turn it around a little bit, you just put it on here, and it has little arrows. You take your thread, you go around, go up, you go down, you go through this little piece, and connect here, and then it automatically, and you can just go and it winds it up for you. All right, follow the directions because all the machines are not equal. They don't, you know, they're all different. Okay, so
Tanya, my goodness, this is so great, and I'm learning things, and Dee says, "Wow, didn't know that." So you know, I'm being reminded of things. So thank you so much. And there's so many different kinds of bobbins, and just like Tanya said, when you get a machine, you need to read your instruction manual, and it will tell you what bobbin system you have. I know that there's a lot of people that have just bought new machines now, and they're Googling bobbin, and they buy the first one they see. But there are a lot of different types of bobbins, and there's probably the most popular bobbin is called a class 15. But then there's also L bobbins, which are a little bit thinner. There's plastic bobbins. There's metal bobbins. So just refer to your instruction manual.
And if you use the wrong bobbin in your machine, it's not going to stitch well. So this is, so I'm not kidding, I have a dozen sewing machines. Probably about almost a dozen different kinds of bobbin in it. So when you put your bobbin inside, okay, all right, you drop it, and you have to make sure that the thread is going in the right direction, and there is a arrow usually on your machine. If not, then look at your manual. All right, so mine goes in the direction it goes in. It shows you in a counterclockwise. It goes under and around, and then I have a cover, and it just pops in on top. All right, now here's the thing I like to do. A lot of the machines do this automatically. However, some machines do not. and this is important. If you just start sewing like this on some machine, oh, it makes a bird nest. You got to take it all apart. You got to take the bobbin out, get out all the threads. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is, and I'm hoping you can see this, is you have your upper thread right here, your top thread, and then I just put in my bobbin. The way you want to do that is you want to take your finger and hold, don't pull, but hold this. I'm trying to get my hand off it. There we go. Hold this thread, not your bobbin thread, but your top thread. Hold it, don't pull it. And then you want to turn that hand wheel all the way around one time. And what it does is it loops that thread for you. And there it is. Okay, it comes up, and then you just want to fish it all the way up. You want to go ahead and put both threads beneath the presser foot. Sorry, you couldn't see that. And then toward the back. That way, when you start sewing, it's not going to get all balled up underneath your fabric. If you forget your thread, yes, ma'am.
I love that you mentioned that. And earlier that you mentioned that if you start on the edge of the fabric, then it won't create that stitch. But if you do have to start on the very edge of your fabric, holding those two threads together with taut tension behind will help you create your stitch. So if you're having trouble getting the stitch started, that will definitely.
Perfect. I was going to say that. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to be quiet.
No, that's okay. I think that's important. And so if you leave them toward the back, you can do that. But you don't want to pull. You just want to hold it like that. Just make it taut, not too hard. Just hold it. And then that way it'll help pull that gentle, fine fabric through and get you started. So if you have trouble, there are lots of little tips and tricks that can help you get it started. All right. After you cut out your fabric, and we'll talk about fabric in a minute. Barbara, you got to keep me on task here, all right? Because I hadn't even started sewing yet, and I'm still talking.
I'm loving it. You just keep on going.
Okay. So I've already threaded my machine. It's ready to go as far as fabric and stuff is going for stitching. But I did want to tell you that you need to check out your tension. Depending on what kind of fabric you're using, depending on what kind of stitch you're using, will determine the tension of it. Now, most machines are already set up for you. My tension is up here, and it's been sewing very well on 4. I don't know of anybody who sews on 0 or who sews on 10 if it goes up that high. Never heard of it. And if you have you?
For free motion quilting, you might do something like that.
All right. I stand corrected. Thank you.
But I don't think anyone will necessarily need that necessarily, because as long as they drop their feed dogs, they should be good.
Okay. All righty. And that's what I do. I drop my feed dog. Okay. So I am going to, let's see. You want to take care of your machine, blow it out with an air duster, or sometimes they come with a little lint brush. An air duster is a whole lot better, a little canned air. You want to always start with a full bobbin. If I have a big project, I'm going to wind them all up at the same time, because I can tell you how many times I run out of a bobbin in the middle of a stitch, and I can just pop my new one in. So start with a full bobbin. For those of you who have never sewn before, never used a sewing machine, this is something, I don't know, it's just something I pulled off the web and printed. It's a stitching guide. They come with just straight stitches. The whole page is just straight. They come with curves. And if you're new to sewing, if you've never used a sewing machine, I would go ahead and do that without thread. And just so you can test the speed of your machine. And a lot of machines are adjustable as far as speed goes, but some are not. Some of the older machines are not. And if you have grandmother's machine, by all means use it, because it is a good machine. They just take care of it. And you have to learn how to do all those little tips and tricks, but it'll treat you well, because mine is still working and purring like a kitten. All right. So check your speed, not only on paper, but check it on your fabric as well. You want to slow down when you go around curves. You want to make sure, if you're having trouble with your machine, take out your bobbin and blow it out, clean it out, because that lint, or you might have some thread caught up in there that might be causing you some trouble. Sometimes all it takes is to rethread your machine. If you don't get frustrated, if it's not working, if it's not stitching, take out your thread, your bobbin, and put it all back in. Sometimes you got to turn your machine off, just like sometimes they tell you, turn your computer off to reset it. Sometimes you just got to turn it off and let it think about it a little while, and it comes back on and it's ready to go. Sometimes you need to change your needle. In fact, if I'm starting a new project, most often, depending on how much I've sewn, I'm going to put a new needle in it. Needles get dull just like everything else. And depending on what kind of fabric you're sewing, what kind of finish it has on it, sometimes it will even get a little gummy or something on the needle itself. So change the needle if you're having trouble. And then check your manual. There I go again. Check that manual. See for troubleshooting as far as that goes. But those are my best tips for taking care of your machine. All right. We talked about, okay, let's do a little, show you how to do some stitching. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm just saying that I love this. Thank you, Tanya. And I'm so inspired. I'm going to use that template that you have with a young person in my life. And
okay, well, I have some others in my office. I'll send you, if you remind me, I'll email them to you in there. It's something we use at Fashion Camp all the time. Here we go. Can y'all see that? All right. Remember I said always have a piece of scrap fabric that you can, and scrap fabric of your garment that you're making or the pillow that you're making, whatever you're making, use that fabric. Don't just use some other scrap that you have. Use what you're going to be sewing on so you can really test it. So here's my piece of scrap fabric. I'm going to sew now. On a normal basis, I wouldn't use purple thread on a white garment, but I want you to be able to see. So I have my fabric underneath. I'm going to stitch a couple, then I'm going to back stitch just a couple, and then I'm going to follow that 5/8 inch mark, and I'm going to stitch. And when I get close to the edge, I'm going to slow down so I don't get a ticket, and then I'm going to back up and come on. And I'm going to check my stitch out, put that up, pull it straight back. Always pull it straight back. Don't pull it to the front, pull it straight back. Even to the side is okay, but straight back is perfect, and you will have less trouble than ever. When you clip, I always want to clip next to you where your stitching is, okay? And I'm looking at my check your tension. It looks really good. And so we're ready to sew. All right. I'm going to do some different kinds of seams, some seam finishes. And so did I talk about, I didn't talk about patterns. I'll talk about patterns when I talk about fabric. So let's move on because we want to sew. All right. A seam holds two pieces of fabric together. The seam can be straight, can be curved, it can be all kinds of different designs. Sewing is an engineering miracle. We take a flat piece of fabric and we do all kinds of things to it to make it fit our ladylike curves, our hips, our shoulders, and our sleeves. Whatever it is, we are engineering a flat piece of fabric to fit. So there's a lot of math, there's a lot of engineering in it, and a lot of technology these days. In fact, it's too fast. I can't keep up with all the technological changes. And I know Barbara has a lot more information on that than I do. I've seen some of those new machines. I've sewed on some of those new machines, and they are wonderful.
It's amazing what they can do, Tanya. But this is a beginner video, so I won't say anything else about my machines that I love.
All right then. Okay. So your fabric has a right side and a wrong side. I know it's a little more difficult. And this one doesn't really have it's a print, but it doesn't really have a certain kind of directional pattern on it. And I'll show you one later. But when we sew, we want to take two pieces of fabric. Most times we will put right sides together. And then we're going to pen the seam that we're going to be working with. And I will tell you that you only want to worry about the seam that you're stitching. You don't want to worry about everything else, because sometimes your pattern piece will have a flat piece here, and it'll have a wavy piece over here, a curvy piece. It doesn't matter. I'm only going to sew from here to here. And so that's the only thing I really want to worry about. When you put your pins, I like to put them horizontal like this. I say horizontal, perpendicular to where I'm sewing. All right, remember, you're going to put it in. I got to change my stitch here to go. Okay, I'm going to line it up on my 5/8, put enough fabric underneath so it can touch. I'm going to take my threads to the back, and I'm just going to start stitching. Okay, and I'm going to back stitch a couple, 1, 2, 3 if you'd like, but no more than that. I'm take my pin out, put it in my pin cushion, and go. I'm not looking at my needle. I'm looking at the 5/8 inch mark, and when I get to a pin, you got to take it out. If you stitch over that pin, you're going to break your needle. All right. All right. Here we go. I'm going to pull it straight back and then snip it right there. A lot of machines have a little cutter right here. Some machines even cut it for you. It's like a miracle. No, I still like to do it the old-fashioned way and use my little scissors because I can get real close and just take care of it one time. All right. Barbara, if you will move us over to the ironing station, I'm going to show you guys how to iron properly. If properly, your garment, whatever it is you're sewing, is not going to look good. All right, here's my seam, my stitch that I sewed. You want to press right over what you stitched, and we call that setting the seam. You want to set it. Okay, and I like to do it on both sides. Once you do that, you can open it up, all right, to this side. And then here's my seam. I like to take it a step further, give this a little taut and press. So I'm truly opening the seam, getting it as flat as I can. And then I'm going to do the other side. Some people think it's overkill, but I tell you what, it certainly gives you a professional look. Now, going to open it up.
I agree that ironing, Tanya, is just as important as sewing.
Oh yeah, it really makes a difference with.
It really does.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I use the flat of the whole machine, the whole iron, when it's a flat. But sometimes you have to use just the tip of it. And then once I do that, I flip it over. And then I press this side. And then that is the best you can get for how our seam looks. And the last thing is you can let it cool and it will set it as well. Okay?
Tanya, I use it's like a wooden piece. It's called a tailor's clapper. And it's like a wooden, and it sets the seam and absorbs the heat and allows it to go into place. And this one's Angela Wolf's, so.
I have one just like that.
Oh, I love mine.
I got it at one of your sewing embroidery conferences y'all did. Y'all did one here in Baton Rouge, and she came. And I love mine, but it's in my office on campus, and we're not on campus quite yet. So
yeah. So this is it, everybody. It's called a tailor's clapper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I've just been letting mine cool. All right, so I'm going to try to show you this. If you look at this fabric, it has all these little pieces of yarn sticking out, all these little threads. Now, my first garment I ever made, this is exactly what my seams look like. I didn't clean finish them. And when I washed it, it was terrible. It came, all these little threads came out in the washer, and it was, let's see, how about here? Is that better? Yeah, you see all those threads? That's what it looks like. And then it only gets worse. And then finally, if you wash it often enough, it'll work its way all the way down to the seam, and you'll get a hole in your garment. So now I'm going to show you what we can do to make that better. Okay. All right. So here's my plain seam. All right, here's one. It's a pinked seam. Remember I showed you these pinking shears earlier? We can take this seam right here, and this is what it ends up looking like. after I stitched it and pressed it. Here's the pink seam. Well, here's the one I just did. Well, all you have to do is do the edge of, and that helps it to not ravel so much. It's quick, it's easy, but I guarantee you it's not going to last forever either. It's eventually going to ravel as well, but it's going to be better than if you didn't. All righty. Okay, here we go. Now, what else can we do? All right, to a pink seam finish that we have is you can stitch it along the edge right here. Okay, so all you really have to do if you want to spend some time on this is run another stitch right along this edge right here. Now, I have one that you'll be able to see better that I've already done. All right, you see it's a pink seam. And then I took a straight stitch and went all the way down. It's added protection against raveling. And it takes some time, but it's worth it. But let me go on, and I'm going to show you some other seam finishes that you can do that are stronger. This is called a double seam. You will see that I did a regular stitch on the 5/8, and on the inside of that, I did a second stitch. It's called a double stitch seam. All right, and that's better than just a single stitch, but still you're going to have all these threads that are going to eventually ravel depending on what you're doing. Now, if this is going on the inside of a quilt or a pillow or whatever, it's not going to get too much abrasion, then it's a excuse me, it's a little better. Okay. Oh, excuse me. All right, here's something else we can do. Here's my plain seam I did. I pinked one side. You take it and you, oh, excuse me.
Bless you, Tanya.
Thank you. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to do a zigzag stitch, which means I have to turn, change my sewing to a zigzag stitch. And here we go. Make that a little, no. Make it a little wider so y'all can see it better. I have my pressure foot lowered. I got my threads up here. And I am holding my thread, guiding my seam, but I'm not pulling or pushing. Oh, here they are. Again, you want to pull it to the back. And this is all I did, is I made a little zigzag stitch on the side, okay? Now, it really doesn't look that bad when you're using regular thread. I used white thread on this one. And it's a lot better than doing just a plain seam or a pink seam. So that's even better. All right, so what else can we do? All right, this is one of my favorites, okay? And I'm going to take and run a plain seam really quickly. I got it on the fabric under the feed at the 5/8, the jewel little, oh, I'm still on, put my needle up. I'm still on zigzag. Oh my. Okay, so here we go. All right. Okay. All right. So here is just a plain seam. And I'm going to go over, you want to press it, you want to set it, you want to press it from one side to the other, then you want to open it. This time, I'm going to fold over the seam allowance on one side. And see if you can see this. You see, here's my seam allowance. Here it is. There it is. I want to fold it under like this, real small, because you don't have a whole lot of room. All righty. And you want to press that down because it'll be nice and it'll be neat. Okay. And then what you want to do is you want to stitch it. I'm going to skip the pressing and just move on for the sake of time. I love to sew.
I agree. I love to sew as well.
All righty. So here is that that stitch on the edge. Fold it over. And here's one that is completely finished, and I did it in white. So it really looks good. It's just called a fold and stitch. And it's a really good clean finish. It looks good if you're going to put it inside of a jacket or inside of a dress. Make it look really good. All righty. Okay. All right. Here's another one of my favorite, and it's called a French seam. Oh, how many times does a guide sheet say, okay, wrong sides together, right sides together? Well, for a French seam, this is wrong sides together. Here is my fabric. Here's my wrong side. I'm going to put wrong sides together. Oh, I can't believe I'm doing that. Well, yep, this is how you make a French seam. And it's a beautiful seam when you finish. And it's also used for lightweight fabrics. If you're going to make a jacket or a dress, it makes a pretty seam. And you can't see it. It's a closed seam. So here I am. I'm going to sew a very small seam. Ooh, I'm going to get a ticket for sewing so fast. The only thing you really have to watch about a French seam is sometimes if your fabric is really ravelly, if it's got a lot of hair in it, threads in it, then, oh look, my scissors are magnetized. All righty, remember, clip close and save yourself a lot of work. So look how small I stitched it. Okay, the purpose of that is sometimes you do have to trim to make sure that all of this is going to be on the inside. All right, I'm going to go press this, to, set it one side, the other side, and then I'm going to get it to where it looks like this. Okay, all right, so I've already done that for you, so we're going to move on. Here is my French seam on the inside that I sewed earlier. You can see how very small it is. I can't see that. You can see. Okay. So then I'm going to fold it to the right sides together like they usually tell you. And then I'm going to stitch right along that edge. Now, depending on your fabric will determine exactly how much fabric or how much seam allowance you want, because I find some are just too small, too narrow. But if you're doing a 5/8, then you want to do a 1/4 inch seam, and then you can make up the 3/8 inch seam, and that's what this is, a 3/8 inch. So a 1/4 inch and 3/8 of an inch is 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so here is the completed French seam. You'll see I stitched it with the nice, neat part, and you're going to go ahead and press it open and look at it. It looks just like a regular plain seam, but the inside is really pretty. You're going to see these in some better made blouses. And here's one that I did with white thread, and you'll see that it's really a pretty seam. I use this a lot. All right. Okay, let's see, my next stack of projects here is, I'm going to have to get the serger out, but I think I have some things that require serger. All right, this is called hemming. It's very thin. It's doesn't have a stretch to it. You use this when you're going to have thick fabrics and you don't want to add bulk to your hem or to the other places. So what I did was I simply cut a piece, all right, and I'm going to you do it right over your seam here. I mean, right over where your seam, where your hem would be, okay? And you're going to just stitch it. So normally when I do a hem on thin fabrics, I will turn it over and stitch it, and then turn it over again, pin it, measure it with that seam gauge, and then I will either hem by hand right here, or I will put it in the machine if it's appropriate for me to do a machine hem. But that is the purpose of, here it is. That is the purpose of this. It takes away that first fold and stitch seam, and so it makes it much thinner, much flatter, and it makes a pretty hem. Okay. All right. I'm going to show you, oh, there's my bodkin. I want to show you what I have here. Curve seams. Oh, no, I want to show you this one. This is called a bound seam. They call it Hong Kong bound. Anyway, I showed you the hemming tape. This is bias tape, and it has, and it's wonderful. So it's cut on the bias. It's not on grain, and it has these folds that have been pressed in it. And it makes life so much easier because it already comes ready. Now they have skinny ones, they have wide ones. I mean, you can get them 1 inch or 2 inches or 4 inches, however. You can make your own to match your fabric. But it does have a little stretch to it because it's on the bias, and that's the wonderful thing about it. It goes around curves really well. But it's a way to clean finish that hem. All right, so I cut it, and what you want to do is you cut your tape to how long you want it, and you will notice that I pressed open only one side. See, I pressed open this side, and I'm going to put my raw edges together for my seam here, and I'm going to stitch along. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm going to stitch along that fold edge right here. Okay, so here we go. Take my threads to the back. Again, make sure I have my thread, enough fabric underneath. And normally I would back stitch every seam, unless I'm going to cross it, but I'm going to use this today. Okay, so I stitched it on, and now I'm going to go to the iron, and I'm going to press it over. Okay. All right. So here I've already done one. All right. I have stitched it all on. I have pressed it, and now I have stitched it. So now I'm going to take it, and I'm going to fold it over, and then I'm going to fold it over again, right along the edge that I have. Okay, you see that? So I'm going to go all the way down and pin all the way and pin. And notice I pinned along the edge, and I pinned on the wrong side, in the wrong direction, because I like to pin in the direction I'm sewing. So this is the direction I'm going to be sewing, and I pinned all of those wrong. So I'm going to take them out before I get there. But let's get sewing. It's hard to take them out when you have them in backwards. I sewed this, I had a black dress, and I used white seam binding on the inside of it. And it was one of my favorite dresses. I had them for years. But this is what it looks like. And so it was contrasting, just like this one was. You see how that is? So the seam allowance is enclosed inside this bias tape, and it makes for a really pretty look on the inside of the garment. Now, nobody's going to see that but you. Unless, of course, it's an unlined jacket, and that's just how you had your jacket. But you know what you've sewn, and you're going to take joy in making something as pretty as this. All right. I know all of us have jeans, but do your jeans have a real jean seam called a flat felled seam? Well, the only way to know is to look inside to see if it's a true flat felled seam. All right, so I call it a jeans seam because most people know what that is. So you're going to do a plain seam. You can either do it right sides together, or you could even do wrong sides together. I've done it both ways. So what you're going to do is you're going to do your regular plain seam on your denim, okay? Then you're going to take in your scissors and you're going to make one of them much, cut it in half. Then you're going to take this piece right here and fold it over, just like we did that bias tape. Well, this time you're using this thick denim fabric. You're going to fold it over and fold it over, press it, and then fold it over again. All right, so it's a real thick seam, but it's a real strong seam. It's one of the strongest seams that they have out there, okay? So this is what it looks like on the right side. You'll see on this one, you're not going to see the stitching on the outside unless you do, until you do your final stitching. But this one, you already see the white thread on this side. I'm getting ready to stitch this right here to close that seam. That's my seam on the inside that I've trimmed, folded, pressed. I'll just do a little of it so you can see. Here we go. Okay, that's enough for this one. All right, so here you can look and see that I stitched. I didn't stitch very straight, but I did stitch it down. And that's, you see, this was wrong sides together. So you can see you're stitching on the outside, and that's what it looks like on the inside, okay? Well, here is one that has been already clean finish, a plain seam, trimmed, folded over, pressed, and it's ready to go. And this was right sides together, which is how most jeans are made. Uh-oh. You see, I didn't pull my threads back. So if that happens, you get a bird's nest. But if you do, go ahead. Just start over again. Put those threads underneath, and here we go.
Dee says, I've been sewing bias tape wrong. Never could get the tape to fold over flat. Now I know what I was doing. And thank you, Tanya. I'm actually learning a lot too.
Well, good.
Yeah. I know for that flat fell seam, the Bernina has a really nice foot that does that.
Yes, there's so many
for that.
Yes, ma'am, they do. And I will tell you that the flat fell seam is the strongest seam that you can make, but we also they have one called a welt seam. And I'm going to pull over my serger in just a minute, but you'll see that I already did a plain seam here. I trimmed it, and then I serged that long one, that longer seam allowance, rather than folding it over. And so the welt looks just like the flat fell, except what they do is they save themselves some time. It's quicker, it's cheaper to do this kind of seam on jeans. You just flip it over and you stitch, and it looks just like it. So I'm gonna go do a little seam so you can see. So go in your closet and look at your jeans and see if you have a true flat fell seam, or if you have, see, it looks like a jean seam, but it's not, it's a welt. This is cheaper to manufacture. So that's that story. Okay, and what do I have here? I had a sample of that. All righty, since we're here, I told you about my bodkin. Okay, here is my ribbon or elastic puller through, or you put your elastic, I fold my elastic on the tip, and then I pinch my elastic like this, and then this little thing comes down and it holds it. Okay. Now what I did here is I did a side seam. Okay, it's like I'm making a little doll skirt. I made a casing. So what's a casing? A casing is something that encases ribbon or encases elastic. So very simple to do. I made the side seams, and then I turned over, I folded and stitched the top edge, and then I folded it over like this. Like that. See? When you're making a casing, you have to put your ribbon. And there are different ways you can do this, but this is how I teach beginners, is we're going to put the elastic in this little waistband here, okay? You're going to leave an opening. And what I like to do is I put 2 pins at the beginning, and I sew all the way around, and I stop at these 2 pins. And all along the rest of the edge, I have a single pin, so that I can know when to start and when to finish, so that I can leave this opening inside, okay? So I'm gonna start at my double pin, do a little back stitch, and a big tip I can give you is when you're sewing, you wanna look at this piece right here. You wanna look at what you're sewing, what you have your hands on, and what you're looking at. You can't be concerned about everything else. You do want to make sure you don't have anything underneath there balled up, because I've made that mistake as well, okay? But you want to make sure all this is nice and neat and clean, and you don't have anything underneath, and you sew up until here. I usually say sew up until your fingers, don't sew your fingers, and then you just keep sewing, you fix, you sew, you fix, you sew. I'm at that edge. I'm going to not sew over my 2 pins. I'm going to take it out. And I have just made a casing, which is another type of seam. A seam, well, I call it one. A seam that you can take your bodkin, your elastic that I've attached, and put it inside all the way around. Okay, I've already started one here. I made a little doll skirt. You'll see that I have I've stitched all the way around, and I left an opening. Well, here's another tip. Here's my elastic that I'm going to put in, but look what I did with the opposite end. I pinned it. I pinned it because I don't want my elastic to come out after I have gone through all the trouble of getting it in there. So you want to push it in, and then you want to kind of just work it through. You want to push it, push it, push it, and then work it through. You want to get to the other side of your casing, of your stitch, and pull that in through. All right. And there you have it. I pulled it through. I saved it. You want to make sure your elastic on the inside is straight all the way through. You can't see it, but you can feel it. And then here is my elastic that I have taken out. That I have put in. All right. Now I just did a serge in here. I don't like that, but you see that on a lot of ready-made clothes. A better way to clean this waistline casing hem is what we did earlier, which was to make that that first fold over stitch. That is much neater, much nicer. So I would recommend you do this instead, even if you serge your side seams. So once you finish that, you measure, make sure that it can fit your doll or you or whoever you're making it for, and then you want to stitch. Now there's several different ways to stitch your elastic. My best way is to put it on top of each other like this, so then you don't have the bulk. So a lot of people sew it like this to do a little seam here, but it adds some bulk to it. You can do it like this, lay it on top of each other, and then put it in your machine and zigzag. And so it's still stretchy, and it won't pop if you do it on a regular seam, and just stitch right over it. Okay? All right. No questions yet, huh, Miss Barbara?
Oh, no, we're just getting a lot of oohs and ahs on your bodkin. Everyone loves it.
Okay, I'm going to switch to the serger, so I'm gonna move that up here. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, and y'all, I think I'm of a generation that didn't have home economics growing up. And I feel that it's very important that what 4-H is doing is kind of replacing that for our young people. And I think that we have a lot to be thankful for with the 4-H program. And Tanya, I love your fabric. Is that 4-H fabric?
It is 4-H fabric.
Yep. Connie was saying that she's been using a lot of the 4-H fabric to make masks.
Me too. I just made some for my office and a few dignitaries. Okay, so where am I? I'm not. Okay.
And what kind of serger do you have?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a Juki.
Okay, very nice. Juki makes very good sergers.
I do like it. I like it a lot. It has been a good friend. It has served me well. I take this serger to fashion camp, and students in fashion camp for us is for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders can come and attend. And I have my teenagers on my fashion board. We're going to be doing that fashion show we talked about a little earlier. And they actually do the teaching and the demonstrations. They come up with all the projects. But one of the things is how to do a seam, how to press it, how to recognize if it has a good tension or not. And if it's not a good tension, we go fix your machine so that you can have a good product. So that's important. And they all get to try out the serger. If they've never done it, then, you know, it's exciting. And I tell them the most important thing is keep your fingers away from the blade because it will cut your finger. All right. So it looks complicated. It really does. It looks overwhelming, but it's not. You just have to read that manual and practice all the pieces and parts. Now, I have a confession. It came with a ton of feet, and I bought it right before fashion camp, and I have not used all of them, but I made a pact to myself to learn how to use all of the feet that came with it and to go through every one of those suggestions and recommendations on how to use those feet, because I want to use this machine to the best of its ability. But I love it. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few things about it. This is the most difficult thing, is threading the machine. Threading the machine is the most difficult. You got 4 things going. You got it going in all the directions. They all have their own tension. But once you get it set up for whatever project you're making, you can leave it alone. But you don't want to have to thread and rethread your machine. I will tell you, when I change colors, I take my spool and I cut it here on the top, tie it off, and then I pull it on through. I cheat, and it works. So you just got to be careful not to tie, not too tight where it doesn't go through. What, Barbara?
Yeah, so I do that too. So yeah, I cheat when I thread. Carrie, who's going to be on our show on Thursday, has a Juki Emma 1000, and that's the air threader serger by Juki. So that just makes it a little bit easier when you're threading your upper looper and your lower looper and serging. So if you don't like to thread, there are options for you.
There are options, and I love that air threader. I saw it in your store, and I sewed on it, and it was amazing. All right. Couple things about serging. So, once you get it all threaded, don't touch it. Unless you're changing the product or fabric or, you know, whatever project. So here, you always want to have a tail. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a tail of a thread here. You always want to keep that there. So watch. I'm going to turn this so I can reach it. You never, I tell my students, never lift the press foot. Never. On the other one, you can put it up and down all you want, but on this, do not lift it. Don't lift it. Because sometimes it comes unthreaded and then you have to all over. Have I ever rethreaded a 30? Yes, 100 times. And I will tell you, I will do everything I can not to have to do that. Because it's a process.
Yeah. Can everybody hear okay? I just want to just check some sound real quick.
Okay, I'm going to sew while you check. All right.
Okay,
so
sounds good now.
Right sides together. It's just going to be a regular seam. And I'm going to place it through here. I love serging on knits. It's awesome, but it is perfect for wovens as well. So it doesn't really matter. All right. I'm not going to lift my presser foot. I'm just going to put my fabric right up against it. And I am going to, what's my problem here? Oh, I had the wrong presser foot. I mean the wrong accelerator. My accelerator was, I was sewing on my sewing machine, not my serger. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we go. Again, I'm just going to put my fabric right up against. Whoa! Do not sew over your pins. Be sure you keep your fingers, hold your fabric here. I can't put it there because you won't see. But hold your fabric here and here. And you sew up to almost your fingers. But you move your fingers out the way. And when you finish, you keep going, keep going, keep going. Is it wasteful thread? No, it's just how it works. So you want to just snip it. Again, you always want to just snip close to where, because it's going to save you time in the long run. And it's going to look neater. So that's all I did. And you can actually see it better on that welt seam because it's a different color. And that's what it looks like. It's beautiful. I love it. It's perfect. And here is the seam that I did. And then I serged. I know you can't see it very well. So sometimes you can serge your seam allowances separately, or you can serge them together. And if, especially for knits, I like to serge them together. It just makes a really good seam. And you got to press it just like you normally would. Okay. I'll do that one more time, and then we'll move on. Yes, leave yourself a tail. Always snip close. And then again, you want to press, you want to set, you want to press to one side, press to the other, and then do the same on the outside if you want a really good looking, let me show you how to pivot real quick. Oh, I was going to do curves. All right, we'll do curves. Curves are easy. I like knowing how to do a curve. I want to show you something about, I was making masks as well. I want you to look at how I cut out my fabric. I had a directional fabric. All my little flamingos are upside down. So when I make the fabric, it would be upside down flamingos. But I kept it anyway because I thought it would be a good story.
You're not the only one that did that, Tanya. On accident, I did as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my machine real quick. It's right here. Get the right accelerator. Foot pedal is what it's really called. So here's a curved seam. I'm going to sew this one. So when you're sewing a curved seam, you go ahead, you want to pin it. You want to set it up just like you would a plain seam. And then you want to go ahead, do the same thing. You're going to put it on, you're going to take your threads, make sure they're all underneath. Make sure your top thread is underneath the skis, both are to the back. And this is going to be a 1/4 inch seam. And what you want to do, oh, see, I didn't have enough underneath. Okay. I'm going to take all my threads and go a little further. It was chewing on my fabric. I didn't have enough fabric. Okay. You want to sew a little bit and then turn as you sew, turn as you sew, turn as you sew, turn as you sew. Keep going. You get to the end of your seam. All right. And Barbara, if you would go to the ironing board, I want to show how to press a curved seam. Then we're going to understitch. This is when your seam comes in handy. All righty. Here we go. Here's your seam. You want to set it. I can set it flat.
This is a good time when us sewers might consider getting a sewer's iron that doesn't have auto shut off, because a lot of times mine shuts off in the middle of my project. But the newer models of my iron have an override for auto off. So if you search sewer's iron on our website, they do have those that don't.
I don't have none. I have an auto shut off. Okay, so a tailor's hem is made with all kinds of curves and pieces and parts, and what you want to do depending on the size of your curve. Look, see, that fits perfectly. And you're going to press. Now I know I'm going to take this seam and I'm going to press it all in one direction, but I certainly want to set it because this is going to go on the outside. You see how that just kind of, then you can just press it like that. And what you end up with is a nice, neat seam, okay? And that is pressed open. All right, what I did was I went ahead and stitched that. I put a lining in here, and you'll see that I clipped. Can you see this? Yes. All right, I clipped because of seam, because I know I'm going to have to, because it allows you to open it up like this. All right, again, and to clip, you just simply take your scissors, and you want to go up to, but don't cut your stitching like that in your curve. You don't have to do the straight pieces, just the curve, so you can open them up. Because sometimes you want these to end up doing this, coming around this way. So how often and how many you do depends on the amount of curve that you have. All right, same thing. You want to go ahead and open it up, and you want to press toward your lining, toward the piece that you're going to do an understitch on, okay? And I can't press it straight. You have to just press one little piece at a time, and one little piece at a time, one little piece at a time, and go all the way through. Okay, I've already done that. I'm going to show you what's called understitching. Understitching is so important. Let's see, where's my understitching? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch on my lining. You see, I pressed everything toward the lining over here, and I'm going to stitch this down really quickly. Oh, here it is. Here's my other one. All righty. I'm going to stitch really close to the edge of my original seam allowance. Okay, now I have to stop and fix, and I'm only going to stitch what I can fix. I'm going to stop and fix, hold, stitch, stop, fix, hold, and whoa, right over that big thick seam a little fast, and stitch. Now, what is understitching for? Understitching is for holding the lining or the facing on the inside, so that it doesn't peek out. And that is my stitching. I would press this down. See that? And what it does is it keeps the lining from peeking out on the front end. And that's awesome. Sometimes if you have a collar or a facing, that's what this is. You see I made the facing already. Whoops. I stitched it, I graded my seam. That means I cut one smaller than the other. I clipped it so it can turn. And this is when it really shows that you can turn it and it lays nice and neat. Okay. But you see, the inside lining doesn't really stay until you understitch it. We're stitching under the garment. I'm stitching on the lining and facing. And again, I can't sew all of it at one time. I've got to stop, check, fix, stitch. If you want to pin all that, you can. If you're not as confident, I'm gonna Yep, I can go 4 because this is a straight piece. And again, that is, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. My scissors are on the other side of the table. And just show you that that is what it does. It allows the facing to be stitched, the seam allowance and the facing to be stitched together, and it allows this to roll up and not come out. So
I think that might be my favorite so far.
Under stitching?
Yeah, y'all chime in and let us know which one's your favorite stitch that you've seen so far. I feel like this is so informative. Thank you, Tanya. I love that stitch.
Okay, I'm gonna do one more stitch, and it's the pivot. Okay, we did curves, we're gonna do pivots. All right, you'll notice I just have a square making a little pillow. You'll notice that I've already pinned, and I have my 2 pins here where I'm gonna start and my 2 pins here where I'm gonna stop. And that is so that once I turn my pillow over, I can get my thread underneath toward the back. Okay. I'm going to back stitch. Okay, when you pivot, you want to go well, there are 2 ways we can do this, but one is you go up until, and you can use your seam gauge and measure 5/8 of an inch because that's the seam. But I'm stopped. My needle is down. I'm going to lift my presser foot and then I'm going to turn directions. Lower my presser foot and go again. Okay? And that's one way that you can do a corner like on the pillow. The other is to go ahead and stitch all the way off. Okay. And then put it back underneath. Notice I didn't clip it this time. I'm just going to put it back in there and put all those threads toward the back. Just saves a little time. So another little tip. Okay, I already have a sample. I'm going to go get my scissors anyway on the other side. Okay, so here are the 2 ways that I have pivoted. One is I have, whoops, where's my camera? There it is. There we go, that's better. There we go. All right, you'll see I stopped and turned. And on this one, I went off and then I came back across. Both of them have the same purpose in closing up that corner. All right, and so what you're going to do is you are going to snip that bulk off. I don't know if you can see that. See, I clipped it. There we go. All right, so again, you can clip. Okay, making sure you don't, this one is a little deeper one. Okay, so how do you, here's another way, one more way to do that corner seam. All right, I'm gonna put it back in and I'm gonna do this last corner. Oh, and it has a name. What is it? It has a name. I don't know. It's called a fold over something. I'm sorry, I have forgotten. All right, so here's the trick. You can pivot around. Okay. Oh, here it is. Let me show you. No, I gotta do it this way. Here we go. You turn it over. You turn your seam over. You fold it over to stitch it. Okay, we're gonna pretend I didn't stitch that first seam. Just to show you how it looks. Okay, I did this one already. And this is how you do it. You go ahead and stitch, fold it, and then stitch it. Okay, and once you do that, you go ahead and trim. Again, oh no, if you're going to do a pillow, you don't trim this. And what happens is you are going to turn this over and it makes a nice corner for a pillow if you do that fold over one. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. And here's my little turnover tool, my poking tool, because I'm going to take it and I'm going to poke that corner there. And there you have it. It makes a nice little turn, nice little corner. Now the others do as well, and you're going to use that one more. The one I showed you where you're going to trim it and grate it more often. Use my little poker to poke it out. I've used Chinese sticks, little chopsticks, to do this as well when I didn't have one of these poker things. But it makes a nice little neat little corner. And so what you want to do is turn all your little corners in, out, poke them all out. And if you remember, I left this opening. And what you want to do is put some stuffing in there. And then you can either hand sew. There's a ladder stitch, there's a slip stitch, or you can sew it by machine. I made one for myself. I made my own pillow yesterday just to show you. And I made it with a lumbar support. See my lumbar support pillow? I love it. And
that is so cute.
All right, do I have a little bit more time?
Oh, yes, I'm loving this. And Connie says, never thought about folding over the fabric. And that was new to me. I've never seen that stitch before. And she also said that her machine sews sideways. So she likes to use that for corners. So I know on the higher end computerized machines that they sew all different directions. So that's
that's awesome. You know, I don't have one. I've never seen that. I'm gonna have to check it out. Do you have one that sews sideways?
Yeah, I do. My machine sews sideways, forward, back, and diagonally.
I'm gonna have to come.
The feed dogs hop right and left, or yeah. So we'll do that in another video for sure.
Okay.
Multi-directional sewing.
Now I've been sewing on fabric this whole time, and I never talked about fabric. So I'm gonna do a little quick lesson on fabric. Oh, wow. There's beautiful fabrics out there. They have some that you can pay a pretty penny for. So you really want to practice on the lesser expensive stuff. All right. You have to have an idea of what you want to do with this fabric. And I would suggest you start with a commercial pattern. Only because the directions have been, I guess, piloted or tried and true, whatever. But patterns have changed over the years. They don't give you all the things that they used to. I mean, they were very meticulous back in the day. I have patterns that don't even have markings. They just have little holes. That's how old. I have a lot of old stuff, and I love it because it tells the history of how we did things back in the day. And before we had sewing machines, everything was done by hand. And if you go to the LSU Clothing and Textile Museum, they even have some samples of the historic costumes that they've had over the years. So check out their website. I don't know if they're open quite yet with the pandemic going on. But anyway, so here's just a simple pattern. And they're pretty expensive. So if you're going to purchase one, what I do is if I find out I really like this pattern, I'm going to take it and use some iron-on interfacing and press that interfacing on the tissue because the tissue is very fragile. And if you're going to use it over and over again, the interfacing really makes it last a long time. I have a pants pattern that I probably have 100 pairs of pants. I'm exaggerating, but a bunch of pairs of pants that I've used, and it's still perfect, just like I had it the first day. All right, so here's just a plain old pattern. It has what it is and what they look like, and they give you some little pictures to show you samples of what, if you're making this, what it would look like. But the back has all the magic information in it. It tells you to measure yourself. So you need this measuring tape hanging around my neck to see what your hip measurement is. And so what you have here is measures of what you want to use, and you have to figure out if you want a small or a large or somewhere in between. And then it tells you how much fabric to purchase. Fabric usually comes in a 45-inch wide bolt or a 60-inch wide bolt, and they'll tell you that as well, how much for what size you have. So here's a little graph, a little math problem that you got to just look at how it's made and check out what you need. It also tells you what the measures are when it's finished. And you'll notice that the finished measurement is always a little larger. If you had a woven fabric and you made a pair of shorts to the size of your hip, you won't sit in it because it won't have any ease. So that when you bend and you sit, you bend your knee and you sit down, it's going to rip. That extra fabric in the finished garment is what we call pattern ease. You have it. You ever had a shirt that when you did this, it was real tight? It didn't have enough ease. Same thing with a pair of pants. If the crotch rose up too high, you didn't have enough ease in there. When you try something on that's not knit, it's going to have extra fabric space in it. You have to have that in order to be able to sit in it or to bend your knee or to, to move around in it. So by all means, know the difference between the two. They also have recommended fabrics. Like, what kind of fabrics? I don't know what kind of fabrics. They have a million boats of fabrics. Well, look here. And they'll give you a whole list of fabrics that you can purchase. Now, you can buy fabric online. I personally like to go. I want to see it. I want to feel it. I want to look at it. I want to see how thick the weave is. I want to try to figure out what the quality of that fabric is. And so if you go to the store, always look for the coupons, and it'll help you save some money on some of that fabric. But this has a whole bunch of information on it. All right, here's some fabric I was talking about a little earlier. This is called directional fabric. You'll notice that my little flamingos are upside down. They all go up. They all go in one direction. And your pattern envelope will tell you how much more fabric, because you're going to have to buy more to get all your flamingos in the right direction. So pay attention if you have some directional fabric. They really have some cute things out there. My 4H fabric is not directional, but I wanted to show you something. When I got it on the bolt, it was in bad shape. When they put it on the bolt, you'll see that my selvage here and this piece are two different, they're not matching. And when I started, I bought the whole bolt. And when I started unwinding it, I found out why. Because when they put it together, it's all wrinkled on the inside. I don't know if you can see that, but what happened is it became all wrinkled and discombobulated on the bobbin. I mean, on the bolt of fabric. The bolt of fabric is going to have a lot of information on it, but and how to take care of it and stuff. But after I got it off the bolt, I straightened my edge, and I straightened my edge on this fabric by tearing it. And I know that sounds terrible, but you want to make sure that your fabric is on grain. That means the weave of the fabric, the ones that goes up this way and the ones that go this way, are straight. Now, sometimes you want on a bias. We talked about that bias tape, and you can cut your own on bias. You ever had a t-shirt or a pair of jeans that started off right at your waist or underneath your arm, and then as it went down, it turned to the front and to the back? It wasn't cut on grain. So you want to pay attention to the grain of your fabric. And look how off grain this fabric was on the bolt. See? That here, and then there you go. That's how it was on the bolt. And so I lose about this much fabric. Now, I did wash my fabric, and so if you have that problem, what do? So I'm going to show you real quick. Here we go. I hadn't done this. I did one edge. I'm going to undo that. Okay, this is cut. See how off it is on the bolt? All right. So you look at your fabric and you try to figure out where is the grain. So you're going to just take and you're going to snip and see if you can follow one of those threads. And if you can, go ahead and cut along that edge. And when you get enough that you think you can grab, tear.
Best stress relief ever. I love that part.
So this is what I started with, and this is how far off green this fabric was on the bolt. So now that I have straightened my fabric, I can go ahead and start laying out my pattern if I want. But that's important to know about your fabric when you purchase it. It's important to know about directionals. Let's see, where am I? Hold on, let me come around this way. So yes, I've been sewing a lot of face masks out of all different kinds and colors of fabrics that I have. And I've been using what I ran out of elastic. So I cut some fleece fabric and made ribbons with fleece fabric, and people like it. Okay, they like it because it's stretchy. I just cut it with my rotary cutter. We didn't even talk about that today. Let's see, what did I say I was going to say and I didn't? All right, we did the serger, we did the pinking shoe, the bias tape, the zigzag, we did under stitching, top stitching. We didn't do top stitching, but that's just stitching on top, equal distance along your seam. You're not looking at your needle, you're looking at the edge of however you are going to be sewing it. And when I top stitch, I like to use the edge of my presser foot as my guide for that. Well, any questions?
Okay, so yeah, we do have a few questions that came in. A lot of people saying that they're learning new things, so thank you, Tanya. Nola Girl's watching, and she's asking if you have any good suggestions for adults wanting to learn more advanced sewing.
Practice. They have some good YouTube videos. Okay.
And the It's So Easy TV show, I would highly recommend.
Which one is that?
The It's So Easy TV show. That's Brothers TV show that's on PBS.
Yes, and even though that Nancy Zeman is no longer with us, her program still is. She's got lots of good tips as well. YouTube videos, I want to say this about them. Sometimes very good, and they have good tips. Sometimes they're not telling you the right way. I've little shorts pattern, they didn't finish. I mean, they didn't even press, so they didn't even talk about it. My sister loves to purchase those online patterns. Online patterns are wonderful. I find them as expensive or more expensive because you have to print those things out. You're gonna use up all your ink on your printer to do that. And the directions are written by the person who created the pattern, and they're not always. My sister likes to use them, and she'll tell me, "Come help me with this piece. I don't know what they're talking about." And it's like, "Oh, I don't know either. But I'll show you another way, a better way to do it." And that's usually what we end up doing, recreating the directions of this pattern. Online patterns, if you don't remember anything else, when you print, there is a test square. You print that pattern out and you make sure that that little test square measures whatever it is they say to measure, which is usually an inch. If it's not measuring an inch as you print it, you got to print it again and adjust your, what do you call that? Your printer size thingy. I'm not the techie expert, my husband is. But anyway, test it. And if you do nothing else with an online pattern, test that square, because otherwise all the measures on everything you print will be wrong. And you're going to wonder why it doesn't fit.
That's a really good suggestion. We do have another question about finding the grain of the fabric, which when my mom taught me how to do that, she would pull the single thread to create the line. But I like tearing it too. That also works.
It depends on the fabric. If it's, you want to do a little test strip, because sometimes it'll just shred the fabric. If you do that with all fabrics, you can't. And some of them are difficult. You can't do that. So if I do the pull string thing, I do more than one. I'll do like two to pull. As you pull, sometimes they break. It depends on the fabric. It depends on the test.
Yeah. So like pre-washing fabric. So would you pre-wash your fabric before or after you cut the grain?
I don't think it really matters, but I like to do it up front because it has a little sizing or stiffening or starch all it inside it. And so I will rip it first and then I'll wash it. And the edge of your taper is going to be, it's going to have a lot of threads, but it won't have as many threads as if you didn't, because it's going to start raveling out. Yes.
Oh my goodness, Tanya, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today and for what you do in 4-H. Can you tell us a bit more about 4-H, and for those who may not know what it is and how they can get involved and get young people exposed to that?
I told you I was a home economics teacher, so part for life skills, how to do things. But I will tell you that I love 4-H because we do the same thing in 4-H. So not only in sewing and cooking like I did in home ec, but in that plus so much more. And what I love also about it is that we give 4-H as an opportunity to be that leader, to give service to their community, learn how to go down to the town hall and have a conversation, learn how to communicate, learn how to say what you want to say, but in a very important and nice way as well. But we have 4-H everywhere. It's in every parish, it's in every county, in every state. I also work a 4-H military partnerships program. So if you're in the military, you look us up because we're there, even in the Oconus, even in Japan. And then I tease my Alaska friend that, yeah, even in Alaska, but they're part of us. So, but Japan, Germany, we have installations there. There's a 4-H club. We have a partnership with DOD, and it's very important that we have that connection with our 4-Hers. But 4-H has so many different kinds of projects. Of course, my favorite is sewing and the clothing and textile, and there's so much to learn about that in just that clothing and textiles subject matter. There's a lot. We learn how to take care of your clothes, how to shop for clothes, how to make those good consumer decisions. The contest that we're doing right now for our teen conference, we usually do on campus. That's not happening. We're doing it virtually, but it's still the same skills: how to shop, how to go shopping in your closet and make several different outfits, how to style them, how to sew correctly, how to take and upscale something. One of my contests is an upscale. It's a recycling project where you're going to take some clothing and you're going to make something else out of it, whether it's going to be a bag or a hat, or take a shirt and make a skirt, or make a quilt. There are tons of things that we can do to help quit putting clothes in the landfill. You buy good quality clothing, you take care of it, and it'll last you a long time. Buy classic things that will, work well. But 4-H does all, I try to teach all of that just in my little fashion program. But we have an opportunity to be a part of a 4-H program in every parish, in every county across the states. It is very easy to do. You can go online and Google 4-H in your state or in your parish, and it'll connect you with what we call a 4-H agent. And it's an extension, cooperative extension personnel, a faculty member who will help you become a part of whatever you're interested in, whether it's animal science or raising chickens, or if you want to do rocketry or robotics or shooting sports or just citizenship. You want to learn more about what the country is like and how to do things right. I'm running out of brain to think about all the things that we do in 4-H, but the greatest thing is in the 4th grade, and we even have younger ones. We call those clover buds. But in the 4th grade, you can join all up until you are my age, because we need volunteers to be a part of our 4-H program as well. In fact, my fashion program has some of the greatest volunteers and faculty members across the state, I think my program is the best, hands down, because you are volunteering. I appreciate that. So I don't know if I helped you with knowing what 4-H is, but it's easy to Google us. You can find me online, Louisiana 4-H, and just look for Tanya Giroir, and there I am. I think my email is in your Facebook post. If somebody has something they want to add or question they want to ask, they can certainly email me. Yes, ma'am?
Oh, it's in the notes below. I'm just pointing down to where they can go to find your email address.
So I don't know if I did the best job of explaining, but we're easy to find, and we're a great program across the board, no matter what you're interested in. Of course, I hope you're interested in fashion. Mm-hmm. Fashion. I mean, a passion for fashion. I really do. So, okay. Anything else?
Thank you so much, Tanya. This was, and Sandra agrees, very helpful, and we appreciate everything that you do. Oh my gosh, I feel like running to my sewing machine right now and doing all the stitches that you showed us, because it was very helpful, inspiring, and I can't wait to get started. So thank you so much for joining us today on our Facebook Live, and I hope it won't be the last.
Okay. There are tons of things we can do. Sewing is just, you know, I do know some ladies who are just, they know plenty of stuff as far as sewing, advanced sewing. But right now she is undergoing chemotherapy. So I'm a little sad about that. So keep her in your prayers. But anyway, I had a great time. I hope somebody learned something new today. So my prayer is that you all stay safe. Y'all stay well, and that God will bless us all, everyone. Thank y'all for joining me. I had a great time. Thank you, Barbara, for inviting
me. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to be involved with you next week when we judge the fashion 4-H show.
Call me.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you.